Hello, I'm Lindsay Houston, and this is Always Be Connecting. I am recently back from a trip to Japan, and I was really inspired by how they add lots of gaming value add elements to everyday tasks. So today I'm going to be talking to Ben Lee, and he is the founder of Blowfish Studios. Thanks, Ben, for coming in. How are you doing?
Hi, Lindsay. No, great, thanks. Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, good. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to be in the very cool position of having a gaming studio.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty long story, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always...
The TLDR version.
Yeah, no. All in that, like, long as in a long time ago. So growing up, I was lucky. My parents had... They're into computers as well. So I've loved gaming since I was a child.
Okay, and you weren't, like, cut off like some... Some kids were.
No, totally the opposite. So my parents would actually... We had a Commodore VIC-20. It was like our first... home game console, I guess, and they would actually drive, because our nearest kind of shop that sold that was in a different kind of like town. I lived in the country, and so it was like an hour drive. And so every now and then, like late at night, it was like 7 p.m. For me, it was late because I was like 7 or whatever. But they'd drive to up to the city and buy some games and bring them back, and then us kids would be able to play them, and be really excited. And back then, the VIC-20, they had like a tape drive where you could save programs. And so at my local library, I went and borrowed books, which essentially just had little programs in them that let you program games, like the old text-based games. And so that's where I started. I just typed those in, and so I learnt programming just by doing that. And I'd modify the code, changing variables and stuff, just to, well, not changing the game entirely, but just changing the way that it played and the stats and things. And that's how I started in there. And then just through life, later on, we moved to, like, when the computers got better. At one stage, I started then using like hex, like a thing called hex editors, which I would then hack into like games that I'd bought, and then just replace the graphics even. Yeah, because I was really into 3D graphics as well, and so I'd make my own graphics and replace those in the games, and then for the rest of my life, I've just been, that's been my passion. It's really about gaming, and so I got my first game like as a programmer, even though I kind of applied as an artist because I was really into 3D art, like I was saying, but they needed programmers more, so I got my first like job in a little indie game studio here in Sydney in 1998, and so just been professional game developer kind of since then, and founded Blowfish Studios with co-founder in 2010, and still just dedicated to making games.
It's very cool, like that was available in that way, that you could adapt and learn like from almost making your own games. Kind of reminds me of MySpace, when you were able to like write your own code of how you wanted your page presented. Like, not many people do that anymore, like kind of reveal a little bit of the workings so you can adapt it yourself.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a lot, like you said, a lot of people use like Canva or Squarespace, things like that, for making their own websites, but there's still a lot of programmers and just developers and product people out there that I get to meet and still, kind of like tinkering and playing around with that sort of stuff. Communities are still definitely out there doing it.
And what's the sort of like, are you focused on user experience, or like trying to figure out what you can do? Is the user experience always the end goal? Like,
for me, like from a creative aspect or from product?
Yeah, or like if you're tinkering around with something, like what are you thinking about? What are you trying to make?
I guess I'm a bit selfish. So I'm always trying to make something that, I mean, I like a lot of different genres of games and even like, books and movies, just from that. Still always fictional, I think. And so I do things that I have an interest in, that I enjoy, I like. Because that's what helps keep my passion up, right? Something that I really like. That I love. So,
and if it's true to you, then it's probably true
Yeah.
to other people.
Some people, yeah. I'm not I don't think I'm a mass market kind of person, but we had some success there. I'm going back to your question about UX. That's always ultra important, right? So that's something it's not part of the creation process initially, but then when you're building the product, it is, obviously, because you move from, all right, what's the idea that I love that I really want to build, into, all right, now I've got to build a product. And the product then has to be UX focused these days, because there's just so much competition, there's so much that's out there, and so I guess the amount of, you want it as frictionless kind of experience for the audience. Otherwise, they will just move on to the next product, and you see that in all aspects. Whether it's it's not just gaming, right? It's like any kind of product out there.
Yeah,
and it doesn't have to be digital; it can be physical. You go to a store, and if there's some, if it's just a physical retail store that doesn't make sense layout wise, or doesn't have the staff or the service there that you want, if there's too much friction to actually get through it, because you got another shop down the road, where it might be friendlier or help you out more, then you'll kind of go there. So it's going,
What are the considerations? Because if there's friction, I don't know.
Oh, I guess So when it's what's the word? When you intuitive, you know what I mean? You in games, especially when you have games, you have like tutorials and onboarding, which is always kind of really needed. But again, it depends on your audience too. If you're making a game that's targeting the people that really love like the really kind of deep strategic games, they don't mind learning and going through that process. But again, that's more of a niche market. If you're doing like a marketing video, and I guess you know about this too, right? It's like, if you don't capture the kind of attention within the first, it's not even like, it's like 5 seconds now or something like crazy. I mean, they'll just move on. And so the same thing with games. It's like there's so many games out there, and that you've got demos, or you've got free to play, or you're using the marketing, the content to also explain and get people interested. Then if it's not just intuitive and people don't doesn't click with them or get it in a very short amount of time, then they just move on to the next product. So
how do you capture your attention? Do you think it's culture? Do you think it's the unexpected, or could it be or like loads of different things?
Yeah, loads of different things. But with gaming specifically, one element is innovation, because the game market is quite mature now, and so you've got your AAA games and your other kind of games that just keep releasing sequels, and so what you're getting, kind of thing. But then if you look at it from like the indie space, it's more about, oh look, here's a game idea that you never knew you wanted, kind of thing. And so so you're looking for innovation there, but still, I guess you'd kind of, you can link it to like how with books and novels, what are the 7 like archetypal kind of stories or story arcs, right? And so in gaming, you've kind of got your genres, but then new games or cool games, it's like a mix of genres, a blend of them.
Bit like originality.
But still presented and, in a very easily or kind of digestible way as well. So that's where that friction part comes into it, I believe anyway.
So like if you got the get the attention in the first 5 seconds, but then also the keep the attention as well. So like, what are sort of like classic gaming mechanisms to keep people entertained?
I mean, a lot of games are either at the core of it, they're about player progression or about increasing the player's skill. So the player getting better and better through playing it, and so they feel that sense of achievement. So there's nearly always so there's always kind of like a sense of achievement when it comes to games. Entertainment, sure, when it comes to like story is really important. but even then, it's like that's progression through a story. So if you feel like you're not progressing through a story and finding out more, it's also probably not going to entice you. So it's nearly always kind of about progression of some sort. And so I think I was trying to remember what's the question again.
But so gaming mechanisms.
Yeah, so it's about and that. So progression is always, like I said, I think that's one of the core elements there. Even if you look at, there's a fairly recently there's a new kind of genre come out about like cozy games. They're just designed there to make the player feel comfortable. It's like really just. And there was an Australian game, Unpacking, that just revolved around players. It's like, I've moved into a house and I've just got to unpack all my removalist boxes and arrange it. And it was a big hit, right? It did really well. And
I can imagine with my daughter.
But that's a perfect example of like gamification we're talking about, right? Like that was gamifying the process of unpacking after you've moved, but you like the game is presented in a virtual way, one that you don't have to physically get up and move stuff. You don't have to do it all in the first week, or you're not living out of it. But people still, with that kind of, that like organizing things and like arranging things and getting things just right, that game really kind of appealed to that audience.
Yeah.
And there's still progression there, right? Like you had to achieve. You had these are the boxes that are packed, and now you got to get through till you got nothing left to unpack. And
there's a payoff.
Yeah.
At the end.
Yeah, it's done in a nice aesthetic that looks appealing, and people feel, again, like that cozy feeling of, I've done that now, I've made my space and achieved it. So, I mean, it kind of throws back to what you were saying right at the beginning about people not really customizing or getting into, like, with MySpace and doing websites anymore. I think people still want to do that, but there's less time. You've got a lot better tools. There's all these platforms that essentially let people now do their own customization, but without having to get into the degree of doing the programming.
Yes,
That's where like Canva and Squarespace, things like that, for websites at least, and
AI.
Yeah. So that really helps that way, and it lets people have that feeling of, I've made something of my own, and so I think it goes back to that. Like that's why I got into games. I'm a builder. I love creating things. And I think people generally want to be able to do that. Just a lot of people don't have the skills, whether it's like woodworking or metalwork or like making games, and that's cooking, even being a chef, right? I think they've got all those things that they're all ways of creating that people really want to do. But there's been just more and more tools and things that are around now which help people do that without actually knowing or getting to that low level of having the skills to do it.
So progression and aesthetic are really interesting ideas to take from gaming. Then I know you enjoy a trip to Japan as well. Yeah. Are there things over there that inspire you or things you've seen that stood out as an interesting gamification of a service or a product?
Yeah, I think in Japan especially, they've you heard the term gacha, and so like that's a big thing for the Japanese. Where here we've been doing it for forever as well with the blind boxes, and even becoming like Kinder Surprise, where you don't know what you're getting kind of inside, and that kind of gets and collection. Sorry, so the gacha has to be paired with collecting things, which is I think the Japanese culture is all about, is like collecting. And I think and that's not just related to them. Like everybody, it's a global phenomenon too, right? So
because it's interesting with the gacha balls that like in Australia, when you see those kind of vending machines with the balls, it's kids. But in Japan, it was a lot of sort of university aged.
I would say kids here, but then even there's a lot of adults still. Probably not as much in these days, which is interesting. But when I was growing up, still adults collected stamps. You know what I mean? Same kind of thing. It's like,
okay.
There's no gacha there except that sometimes it is, because you'd collect those stamps from envelopes and letters that people would send to you from the different parts of the world, and then you'd reach out to friends like and family and say, and they'd like my family. I used to collect stamps, and so I had friends that they were American or they were from Europe, and so they knew I collected stamps, so they would like save the envelopes for me and then give them to me, and so you could cut them out and put those stamps because they're from a different part of the world that back in those days never dreamed of kind of really. Well, I didn't really dream of going there, and when I was a little child, and so that was interesting. But yeah, so in Japan, I was saying, okay, that's kind of everywhere in society, but it does need to be compared, I think, with the human need to collect and make a full collection. Because if you're just collecting items and that have no value to you, then that doesn't, I think, appeal to anybody. Nobody just wants, you could get a fork from this sketch, or you could get a golf ball. If it's just all random, like no one cares. It has to be something that's kind of, this makes sense. It's themed to something. It's themed to the place that's giving out the gacha. So one example, we went to this like sushi train place, Sushi Rio, where you just ordered sushi. It was like through a screen. And like it's fully automated, this little train sushi train would bring the table, like every single thing. But on the screen, it's like, and this is really appealing to the kids. It's like every now and then, and you didn't know exactly what triggered it, but we figured out it's most likely just you order more and you get more things coming out. But it would present a little mini game, and even there in the mini games, they made it so that there was 3 mini games, and so the kids would want to like also get all 3 mini games. But then if you beat the mini game, then it would also reward you with like a little collectible, which was like a themed, it's a very like cute little plushy thing themed to the restaurant, but there was a collection of them. So I'm sure you've got the ultra rare ones, and so again it's kind of appealing that the kids would want to get them all, and you kind of keep coming back. But it was just that was just like a very simple addition to something that it's harmless too, right? But it's fun, bit of entertainment, and that's what games are always about too, is about entertainment. So well, it's about like a Walt Disney story. I heard that sort of Disneyland came from a time when he was took his kid on a merry-go-round and he was bored. Yeah. And he's like, why am I bored? Like, it's supposed to be fun. So like that was kind of like a big thing for him to build the theme park, to make it more interesting. There was always something going on. You have characters walking around, sort of value adding and stuff. A couple of things in Japan that caught my eye were when the trains shut in the station, instead of like aggressive, if you don't move you're gonna get squashed and we don't care or whatever. They got this cute song that by the time the song ends the doors are going to be closed, and it's a really beautiful, nice way to sort of have a safety alert, essentially. Yeah, that's very cute. And the gacha balls as well. I saw some recycling efforts. And again, they don't have to recycle like in a commercial capitalist world or whatever. But they had like a Rube Goldman type recycling system where you put the ball in the top and it it's making that fun. Rewards you with like a visual display of some kind. So like, and interesting to sort of add these things as a public service announcement and a recycling mechanism. Well, and I think, and if you think about it more deeply, it probably goes even deeper than that. So with the little tune for the trains, it's like here you need like some readout or something, and on the side it says how much, how long before the train departs, right? Like we're talking about. But you have to be on the platform to know that. Like with the tune, if you're going towards it, the tune is like going to be unique in that where it starts and where it ends, and so once you've heard it enough times, you're going to know. All right, hang on, am I at the start of that tune or am I at the end of that tune? If you're at the end of that tune, it's like, oh, I don't have a chance to get that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
at the start, like, you know, when you don't even need to be like invisible range of anything, so you can kind of hear that. So it's, again, it's just ways of thinking like that kind of works beyond what you've thought of. So
it's kind of like that kind of signals of noise is almost like graphic design of like signage and stuff, but in a very different way.
I mean, how does like current pop music artists work, right? Well, not even that, like for decades, you know what I mean? It's like there's music producers out there that know how to produce music that appeals and has that innate kind of appeal to
earworm
people. Yeah, and stuff. So you hear a tune or a jingle. Jingles have always been something with ads, right? So, they're just like an audible trigger that sticks in your brain and stuff like that. So.
Have you delved much into the world of music? You just need to have a certain amount of music in.
So in games, we were initially. When we first started the studios, me and myself and my co-founder, so we used like music contractors where we got to know them, and we'd be involved with the production of sound effects, but then the music as well, the composition of that. And part of that process is around, all right, this is the game, here's the theme. And they, musicians are great in that they always ask, what's the kind of feeling you're trying to evoke? And that's what music is about, right? It's like the question is, all right, what is it you're trying to evoke in the listener? And whether, like you're saying, it's like, do you want to evoke panic? Because that's sometimes in games you definitely want to, evoke panic. I don't think in real life you ever really want to evoke panic, but in games you do. But then, certainly in the train ones, like you want to give across the message that there's a time running out, but in a like you're saying, in a kind of nicer way, pain-inducing way. So
interesting. There's always a way to reframe it as well, like. For example, if my daughter's room is messy, I could be like really angry, like, how dare you? You have to do this. Or my partner's got a great way of doing it. You're like, I need you to help me with a big job. And then suddenly it's just reframed into, instead of her being accused and degraded, it's like suddenly she's really important and she needs to help and step up and stuff. So like, interesting how gaming can flip the scripts in some ways.
It is, but when you do that, it always comes down to the game creator or the designer, director. Like I was saying, it's about what you're trying to evoke in the player. So as a form, and this comes back to even like what the Japanese do with gacha, but generally in gaming, you need to take the player through an emotional journey as well. And that might be a journey in 3 seconds, or it might be a journey over, like movies do it over 2 hours, right? Generally.
Yeah.
TV shows can do it over a year. I mean, they're kind of like 40 minutes because you need to, even though you might have a long story arc, you need to take the viewer through an emotional journey there in that 40 minutes, 45. So games are the same thing, because generally what people will communicate as boredom or disinterest in something is because they just feel flat, like the emotions are just flatlined, right?
So,
you know what I mean? So, and sometimes it might be too overloaded, like with comedy even, you might think it's strange, but you can't just be like the funniest all the time, because I guess it just overloads you. You need it. If you're going to do that, have it in breaks. And so I guess there's that's why journey
Disney would throw in some villains to.
Right, it's
not all sweet and candy.
Yeah, you
got to feel a bit scared before the big payoff.
Yeah, and that's just because, like it or not, the body gets it's about adrenaline. It's about all those feelings. And that's where we're talking about like gacha and stuff. Kind of like leans into when it comes to the brain, just the payoff of winning something that you were really looking forward to, essentially, right? And that's what it was. So But then with normal gaming, it's like kind of, you have your story beats, and then you have your emotional beats, and then you have your action beats as well, right? Like in a normal kind of action game, I guess. And so you need to pair those up in a way that also makes sense and not contradictory to each other.
Yeah.
So, you don't want your really difficult, like twitchy kind of gameplay paired with the really kind of soft, gentle, like music even, or the story, or how the story is progressing. Like they all work together essentially to create that experience.
So gaming is definitely more than just sliding down a flag at the end with a cool song.
But like that, but that's that simple idea. But that's so that you're obviously referring to like Mario, right, for that part. But that is again like Nintendo kind of like masters it at game design development. But even that last bit is like it's a representation of you've achieved the end of the level. That's great. But there's that one last bit which doesn't impact the fact that you finished the level. But the higher you can jump on that flagpole and go higher up, it's another reward. So you know what I mean. So it's it's like they've done that really well. And there are some like one of my favorite games is Journey. Like it's funny, it's called Journey, right? And that was amazing in the story and the emotions it took you through the whole game. And one thing it did really well was at the end of the game, and I think I've noticed my wife, she just finished Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. They did they did the exact same thing actually. I think, I don't know, inspiration or not, but at the end of the game, essentially, it's just about making the player feel good and giving that sense of just achievement and saying this is the best moment in the whole game. And they paired the music, the action. You still had to do kind of action gameplay, and also just the aesthetics and what was happening. So in both cases, you're kind of like rising up into the sky on the back of these really kind of majestic kind of dragons or beasts. And so, but then the music also was just very uplifting, and so just the whole thing together just made you feel this is amazing. And while to get to that point through the game, there's really deep, dark areas that make you feel really kind of again, it's that whole making sure you're giving the player the right emotions and feelings of the different parts of the game as well.
Yeah, interesting. It's not what you say or do, it's how you make them feel, as Maya Angelou says.
Yeah, and if you want to take this to like like gamification, we've had people like banks come to speak to us before where they've been trying to put gamification into just their apps and things like that, right? Like a lot of people trying to put gamification into apps, mobile apps. And if you're trying to reward or motivate or encourage people to do a certain action within the app, you want to reward them for that action, and that means from a UX experience and also from some kind of general feedback loop, right? So I think sometimes people will forget that and get lost in what is the actual task and action I'm doing, and trying to theme something to that. And that might actually make it. It's not a reward. It might make it feel worse. Like, a budgeting app. It's like, you got to spend money, but it's not like you don't want to make people feel bad about spending money. Most of the time, like in a budgeting app, like it's something
or
you have to do.
Feel conned or fooled.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to be able to still give that feeling. It's like, oh no, by hitting my budget or reducing it, like that's made me feel good about that, but not bad about spending money, because everyone's got bills and you've got to do that. So you don't. It's a challenge to figure that all out.
And then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was the sort of balance between your passion and your love and holding a business. Because an interesting thing that was mentioned to me over the weekend was that you're very good at probability, and you're very good at sort of understanding the business side, and kind of adding the gaming element is introducing risk. So is creativity always risk?
I mean, yes, because with creativity, you're always trying to create something new that's different. And when you're doing that, there's no guarantee that what you're creating is going to be liked. Yeah, sure, there might be, you guarantee that at least one person out there will like it, but then, like you said, how do you get that? with business, yeah, right. But in business, there's a certain level of return on investment. If you want to be able to keep creating, that's the thing. If you want to be able to keep creating, you need to find some kind of commercial or way that the lifestyle that supports that. So that's where the risk comes in. And if you're just doing it as a hobby, there's still a risk that you create something that no one's going to like, or people will. Yeah, in this age of the internet, when people are fairly free with their comments and feedback. So sure. So you'll hear the best and the worst of that, which is good. I mean, you hear the best and you do hear the worst, so you're just going to take that into account. But generally with anything in the creative industries, it's tough because when you try and create even product, you just don't know whether there's a market for it. Yeah.
So I guess you guys get it more than anyone. The customer feedback. Like, everyone's if people don't like it, they have a strong reaction to not liking it.
Yeah.
So, like, there would be a lot of comments on what was good and what was bad. I guess it's like we talked to somebody who worked with comedians, and they were talking that the comedians are, like, constantly doing this kind of customer survey of, like, what jokes land and what jokes don't land, and how to communicate best. So I guess there's an element of that in gaming too.
Yeah, no, definitely, and that's generally through. Used to be just through reviews left on stores and the game stores, but now with social media and content, if you release a game, you can go search on YouTube or Google, and you'll be able to pick up all the different bits of feedback. But like you're saying with comedians, it's actually a benefit to do that, because in, say, some other industries or in, say, some other product lines, that you create something, you throw it out there, and you don't really get that feedback, or you get back as like sales data, which is it's better than nothing. But if you're not getting actual like customer feedback, you don't know what people actually think of your product, how to make it better, or what they're finding the issues with. So having that community or player feedback is actually really important for you to get better at creating things that both you love and your audience can love as well. So
do you have a process of like testing of like, maybe first of all you test it, then a testing team, and then like maybe a small section of like they do screenings in cinema and
so in game 100%. So maybe it's changed over the years, but it's still the same. Like you said, you test it yourself. You're building that and making sure you enjoy it. Because if you don't enjoy it, then that's first gate. Then you test it with friends, or like when we first started the business, there was this local kind of monthly events called like Beer and Pixels, or this kind of meetups where like-minded game developers would get together, and you could share it with other game developers and get them to test it, and they'd give like feedback both from that way. Then if you're on with the digital gaming these days now, you can release demos, or you can release kind of like beta or alpha versions of the game, and again getting that feedback. And you've got like communities driven through Discord where you can bring people in, and again you have that, you can give them access and you hear back. There are companies out there where you can get do focus testing still, so you can do that. But then in that you kind of progress through it until eventually you normally do like an early access launch potentially, or in the mobile gaming what people would do, because you can kind of restrict your game to different regions of the world. So you would choose in the old days, you choose somewhere like Canada or Australia that for the Western market, and you choose other markets which are kind of that they mirror kind of the likes or dislikes of, say, the American market, which is the largest market. And so you release it there knowing you're not going to get tons of players, but the feedback you hear back from those players is generally going to be in line with what the feedback is from from the American or larger European market. So and the reason why it's important is that game launches are important. A launch for a game is important. It's like its most highest visible time, like when its visibility is the highest.
Yeah.
So while some games definitely can become popular after you've launched and you can build it up, if it wasn't that popular, it is difficult. So you generally would test in these smaller regions to make sure you get the game to kind of the level that you want. And I think
you're able to build momentum.
Yeah, or
when you go through that launch, because the launch process must be intense marketing.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Carry, you line everything up, and you're lining up influencers, you're lining up paid ads, you're lining up reviews, articles by website, game websites. Depends how big you are. With AAA, you're lining up other stuff too, like launch parties or bus advertising, stuff like that. So yes, it is a big thing. And going back to that risk part, it's like you really want to try to de-risk as much as possible and to make sure you have a product that at least is going to hit some certain commercial success, so you can keep doing it. So
yeah. But it's funny, isn't it? Because I don't know, teenage me making something for a friend, you just kind of want to present it and they'll be delighted and they'll enjoy it. So does that take something away from the presentation stage that you've done all these tests, do you think? Or
in what way do you mean, like taken away from the presentation?
I don't know, how much do you got the data side of it, testing it, but how much is kind of just the leap of faith that this is good and someone's going to love it, and it's you just can't wait to get it to them, and it's I
mean, that is a large, that's the biggest part. I mean, every launch we do, you go through the same process where you test it yourself, you test others, but you generally have created that, and it's still when you're doing it for yourself, if it's your own IP, your own product, you've still created something that you really believe is going to be successful. And games is a very big hit-driven business, and so I think over the years we've kind of, you always have that core feeling that this is going to be successful, people love it, but it's the most usual, the most common response is, like you said, you find those handful of people that really enjoy it and really love it, but in general, it might not have, hasn't hit the mark when it comes to getting enough players and people to do it. And sometimes, it's not related to the fact that the product isn't good. It's that whole, it's
how it lands.
And because with everything,
how the wind is blowing.
Yeah, you need, when content or something goes viral, and that's when you have the large success. And so, even there's been a trend lately for games to actually be designed around video content and influences that those players essentially can play the game, and they're able to take a snippet, and create video content of the game, which will entice and go viral, entice other people to play it. So in other words, game designing games for that purpose. So that's not what the game is about, but it has to have a certain element to it that makes it easier to be talked about and referred over social media.
Yeah.
Kind of big way.
So as all the testing There's always going to be a little bit of blackjack involved.
Yeah, you're never guaranteed to know that something will be. I think what generally is guaranteed is if it's not good enough, then you'll hear that. So I think it's more like if your pre-launch testing is you're getting bad feedback and it's not supporting the launch, then that's probably going to be highly probable for the launch. But if you're actually getting good feedback and people think it's great, that's still not a guarantee that it's going to do well when it launches. Like we were talking about, you put so much into a launch, but you also don't know what other games are launching around the same time as you or just before. You
Or
do
something
that research.
happened in the news that...
Yeah. So, exactly like with the news these days. I've been part of something that, we were part of like a council community, a panel that's working with Screen New South Wales, and they're going to announce that, but it kind of something happened I won't say, but something happened in the news, and that made them not want to talk about. It wasn't related to gaming; it was just it was a bad event, and so obviously you don't want to try to make good news out of well, there's a lot of bad news going on. So
interesting. So what I've jotted down from that in terms of gaming mechanisms, I've got aesthetic, collection, progression, identity, emotional journey, and making people feel something.
Yeah, another one you can add to if you're trying to take gamification outside of games, and it's nothing that probably they do in Japan, but they do everywhere, right? It's about making, like you said initially, the kind of the task or something, an action, enjoyable. So one big thing is cues. Like if you're waiting for something, how do you make that waiting time more fun?
Yeah.
So then that's where, again, and some people have turned that into an actual main focus. So my brother-in-law, he works with Vivid and works around the food and catering and kind of that part of Vivid. And every year, he helps run these booths, whether it's about ice cream or donuts or something like that. But then there's an entertainment kind of aspect to it. And so one there was this digital kind of experience, gaming experience where you could play. There was it wasn't this, but it was if you had digital chessboard on the ground, and kids and stuff could play that in front of the food truck kind of thing. And then another one he does all the works with one of the gelato. Mount Messina Gelato, I think. Well, actually, I don't know. He works with one of them, but they have the kind of the crates, and they do the kind of themed ice creams that have the UV, the fluoro lights in it or coloring. So kids can go in there, and it's all fun. You have these creations that glow in the dark and all that sort of stuff. So, and to me, that's part of. I would put that into a bit of, I guess. They've gamified it in a way that is just added. It's broad, general, right? It's you're taking a product that is about something and then adding something that's totally not related to it to make it more fun.
Yeah,
where I'd maybe kind of bunch that in with. So
and then beautiful, and then what we were saying about originality and creativity, test it and then throw it to the world.
Which is always massive. I think I've become more. You're always nervous around those kind of launches, but
of course. Well, I get nervous making a social post. So it's a bit bigger. So
there's one kind of big thing about game development and game developers is that most people don't want to launch their game. If you're a game developer, like I said, you're doing it for yourself. You're building it for yourself. So any game developer will generally just want to keep making that game.
Yeah.
Because you know that you're having fun. That's what you love doing. Releasing the game is actually the end of that, right? It's like, sure, you might have games that are like live service and continue on. But again, once you go to a live game and live service, you have to start developing it for your community, or if it's not successful, it stops. So generally game developers, generally, and when I say game developers, I mean everybody involved in the game development process, whether, from art, writing, game design, programming, sound, audio, QA. Everybody is kind of like, I want to make this game as good as possible. Yeah. And if you're, you from that aspect, you can never, ever hit a point where you're saying, oh, this is perfect, this is everything. Maybe you can, right? But in general, it's very difficult, so people don't want to release it to the world.
Yeah. Always going to be an element of...
Yeah, because like you release it and then you hear all the bad feedback, which you always get. You always get bad feedback, and you always go like, "Oh, yeah, I know."
Stuff you knew about.
Yeah, it's like, I know, but I didn't. There's always that commercial side where you can't like, unless it's a hobby, and that's where, in some ways, that's the safe space for game development if you make it a hobby.
And what are you doing at the moment? Is there something you want to promote or?
No, we've got a live service game we got at the moment, which is Phantom Galaxies. It's a game that again I kind of made for what I want. It's like inspired by Macross Robotech and like Transformers, like transforming robots in space kind of thing. I love that. And so that's on it's on Steam, Epic Game Store. We've got a few other games in development as well.
Yeah.
But unreleased. So yeah, I mean, we're still making games and we still really enjoy that. We can put a part of ourselves into it, but at least you're not relying on that launch to get the kind of final payoff. I mean, you still are, because you need them to have a successful game so that you can keep doing it as well. But
I think it's going to come more and more into all types of industries. As you said, like, people are lighting up ice creams these days to stay ahead. We're going to have to keep everyone entertained and make them feel something interesting. Awesome. Thanks, Ben. I really enjoyed that chat.